All right. What's up, guys? Chris the Ninja here. And yes, I am doing this. Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. I am doing this. Yeah. So last semester I was working on some homework and I realized that hold on, let me make sure that this is actually live because there's a chance that it may not be showing as live. Oh yeah, it's showing live. So last semester I was doing some homework and I was explaining how imaginary numbers work. And it made me think about like, well, imaginary numbers is kind of a confusing like title for a concept. I mean, like you might be like, oh, imaginary number, it doesn't exist, right? But they do exist, and we actually use them in electrical engineering or electronics engineering and frequency response and stuff like that, which is very important for the electrical and computer engineering field and stuff like that, electrical, electronics, computers, and all that. It's very important. Um, and so I think what ended up happening is that I made kind of a hold on a second. What was I trying to say? Okay, so I think I made a point kind of saying like imagine actually let me go back and look because I have all my notes from like way back. Let me see. That was that. Uh was it here? Let me see. I explained it somewhere like a an object moving um through another plane or something like that. Let me see. It's not that. I really should have titled my pages a little bit more. Um that's my bad. Crystals. Let's see. Probably around active filters. Or was it the study session on active filters? Hmm. It was somewhere. I swear I had it. I had it somewhere. I'm trying to find out where exactly I said it. Um was it in my 211 review? No, it wasn't that. Wasn't in op amps. Wasn't in this one. Review session. Dang. Well, you know what? Forget it. Forget not. You know what? It's cool. It's all good. It's all good. No, it's good. It's fine. It's fine. I don't have it, but here's essentially what I had said way back in another stream. I forgot where exactly I said it, but essentially we exist in a plane. If you were to take a I said something to the effect of like a 2D object can't what the cheese. Isn't this is the right page, right? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So like a 2D object can't perceive a 3D object, but can observe its effects. Now, what do I mean? What do I mean by that? So essentially, I drew a picture that I will also recreate here as like an introduction kind of this to this entire thing. This is my trash bin. Oh well. So I drew a circle. We have homeboy here. He in the two-dimensional plane. And let's say a sphere is going through his plane. What he's going to see is a circle getting bigger and then smaller. So essentially this is what he's going to see. That's because he can't see a three-dimensional object. He can just see something moving through the plane. So that's just like kind of where I got the idea from. Um, so let's go to imaginary numbers. Let me get my good pen real quick. I have a good pen and I have a trash pen. I'm currently using my trash pen, but I want to use my good pen. And I just had my good pen like 2 seconds ago. No, this ain't the good pen. Where did my good pen go? I just had my good pen. Ah, here it is. Good pen right here. Y'all might be asking like Chris, the pens look the same. Yes, but one of them worked better than the other. There's a scratch on the one that doesn't work as well. All right, so what is an imaginary number? Let's just start off with the basics. What is it? What is an imaginary number? Well, an imaginary number is it's a concept that basically says it's represented by the square root of -1. Now, square roots. Let me see. The square root is defined as the root of of the same number multiplied by itself that can get the result inside of the square root. So let's do a quick example. What would be the square root of 36? So these are all the numbers multiplied together that can give you 36. But if you'll notice, 6 times 6 is the only pair that is the same number that will give you 36. So this would be 6 squared. Now, with that being 6 squared, the square root of 6 squared is 6. And that's the easiest way for me to explain like what a square root actually is. So, with that being said, is there any number that we can multiply together to get -1? Well, the only way to get -1 is 1 times -1, and that's about it. That's about the only way you can get. That's about the only way you can get a -1. Now, I can't do 1 times negative because now that is just 1 times a -1. That's no longer a square. I can't do -1 times -1. That gives me 1. So now we're at a conundrum. We're at a point where there's no real answer to this. Hence the name imaginary number. No real answer. There's no real answer. So we say the square root of -1 has, well, square root of -1 essentially boils down to that. But we sometimes will actually need to use the square root of a -1. Like sometimes the derivative of something. Now I'm not going into derivatives and calculus and stuff like that. Like that's another video for another day that I don't feel like doing today. But like let's say I have like x squared minus, or well, let's say I have like x cubed times minus 49 x squared plus x plus 1, and then some math down the line. We take a derivative, or like, or x equals a negative number. So like let's say x equals -9, and then they want us to do like the square root of x. Well, you kind of can't do the square root of x, because you do the square root of x, you have square root -9, which would be 9 times -1. That gives you 3 times the square root of -1. Sometimes we'll have to have something where we represent something with a negative value like that. So sometimes it happens, and that's where we came up with the symbol I. Now going back over here, that's basically what I said right here. We can't perceive any number that we can't perceive any number that is multiplied together by itself to get to -1. I should have made that more clear. Now, I propose, as just a way of explaining, that these imaginary numbers could be represented as a fourth dimensional number. Now, this is where I might risk sounding crazy. I might sound like a wacko. I don't really care. This is a YouTube channel where I play video games, I cook, and I make Christian content. And occasionally, I do my homework on here so I don't fail my classes. Do I care if I look crazy talking about some numbers that like 5 people are going to see? Not really. But if I end up not being crazy 20 years down the line, I said it first. It's a win-win for me, because tomorrow I'm going to just play another video game. But a few things I would like to say before I actually get really deep and get started into this. A few notes to be aware of. I am not claiming in any way or changing the mathematical rules and laws that apply to imaginary numbers. I'm not changing anything. It is assumed that imaginary numbers are the same. They work the exact same. They have the same function. They have the same value. I am not changing anything. I'm not claiming to change anything to break mathematical laws. This is just a way of thinking. It's just an idea, okay? I am not changing anything about math. I'm not smart enough for that. I'm not going to go through that much schooling for that. It's the same thing, okay? Second of all, like I said, this is just another way to think about imaginary numbers. It's just another way to think about it. That might make it a little bit easier than saying, oh, it's an imaginary. It's an imaginary. Imaginary friends don't exist unless like you're 7 years old, in which all of your imaginary friends exist to you. But you can't really prove that they're there. You just know that they're there. You get what I'm saying? So like, but if you say you have a friend that you just can't see right now, like my best friend, my best friend is not imaginary. You just can't see him right now. Hi, Slater. But that doesn't mean he's not real. Y'all, I don't think y'all ever seen him on the channel. Wait, y'all seen him on the channel like once. but that doesn't mean he doesn't exist. Y'all just can't perceive him. Um, Third, I'm making the assumption that all fourth dimensional elements are imperceivable or imperceptible, but able to be proven. I'm making that a clear assumption. I'm not claiming to have discovered it. I'm not claiming to be changing the laws of physics and stuff like that. I'm just saying and assuming that all of this higher order stuff like that is not able to be seen with our eyes, but we can prove it through math um and observable phenomena our in our dimension in our reality. Finally, it's assumed like by now you should realize I'm assuming that the fourth dimension does actually exist and has time as its element that as um as an example. So like in physics, this where like the explanation kind of goes a little bit deeper. So in physics, um x is position. That is the first dimension because that's just a dot. It's just a point. On some grid, it's just a point. V is velocity. Um, it goes in time, but like it it's usually shown as like a line because it's distance over time. So you take a position, you give it another position later, that's velocity. That's two dimensions. And then now we can also go here or here. Now that's two dimensions. Then we have I'll call it space. We'll call it space, which is or fields. Field space, space, fields, acceleration, whatever you want to call it. It means like it's basically the same point I'm trying to make. You have something starting here, it can come down or it can come down to a center. So it's not necessary. Well, actually, let me draw that in a different color. So you have like a point here. It might come down to here and end up here. Now that's moved from because like let's say there's like some large object here attracting everything to it from all directions. So now you have something that's moving left and right, up and down, and in and out. That's like a field of a like a magnetic field or something like that. And then we'll say that the fourth is like time. We'll say the fourth is time. Oh, let me write this as third. And then fourth is time. So time, you have, but then encompassing all of this, encompassing the, let me draw the third um again real quick. So encompassing all this, so you have like coming around here and 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 here. all that all that coming through, so moving through and around is the fourth. So that's kind of the general concept. It moves through and around. So with all those assumptions made out of the way, made, so the rules of imaginary numbers. So let's get into the rules of what imaginary numbers are. By definition, I is represented as the square root of -1. If you square I, you get -1 because if you square root, the square root cancels, and that gives you -1. If you do I cube, you get negative square root of -1 because you have -1 square root of -1 times square root of -1 times square root of -1. This is the same as I squared, which equals -1, and the -1 times square root of -1 gives you negative square root of -1. So that's how that one how that kind of pans out. Then you have I to the fourth. You have square root of -1 squared times -1. Then you multiply that by um wait, square root I to the fourth is 1. I explained that here because you have the square root of -1 squared. Multiply that by -1. That gives you the negative. That gives you that gives you. Jeez, this is kind of hard to explain. It's not really hard to explain, but like it's hurting my brain a little bit because it's a lot of math, and I think I may have made a mistake. Um, so you essentially have this come out here. You have -1 times -1. That gives you 1. That's how you get 1 back from that equation. I made a mistake when writing this down earlier. And then the cycle repeats every 4 iterations of values. Um, oh snap. Okay, so it's an infinite loop that goes every 4 iterations. So that's something to keep in mind. But that's similar to a circular function or a circular equation. And um, what do I mean by a circular function or circular equation? I mean when I say circular function or circular equation, I mean an equation or function that will loop back an equation or function that will loop back after some level of repetition. Another example of this would be sine and cosine. So sine theta and cosine theta are circular equations. These are also circular equations. they can also be used to create a circle. And so that's actually something that I was when I was doing my like a little bit of extra research into this to make sure I wasn't actually crazy um in thinking that something like this could actually be possible because I mean like it I'll admit it to me it was a little crazy. I asked a couple professors um I asked a couple of my professors if it was like possible. So my TAs said that's a good idea. Like that's an interesting and new way to think about it. My professors thought I was trying to redefine math, and they said no, do not redefine math. And I was like, hey, 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 how you doing? No, I'm kidding. I'm not redefining math. That's way above my pay grade. I'm not redefining math. You got me messed all the way up. If you think I'm about to redefine some math, but I just wanted to show y'all something right here. So let's say I have like say I have a circle that's like let's say I have a 5 by 5 circle. Let's say the width never changes and it might go like 2 or whatever. I think I have to square this. I forgot what the circle equation was. Minus 4 plus that squared. Okay, yeah, yeah. So squared plus squared. So let's assume like the circle example or the sphere example. We're gonna have one constant, and we're going to say that this is moving across a three. It's a sphere. Well, actually, let me, and then we'll do like a plus 4. We'll say it's oh wait no, just do 4 5 squared. Okay, so if we had a circle that was this exact equation, and we just did this, we should have a circle. The circle should equal 50. So as like a sphere would pass through, if the sphere equaled 0, wait no, hold up. Oh wait no, hold up. I made a mistake. If for some reason we had 0 in the middle, that'll equal the same thing. But as we move to like let's say 1, so -1, or if we let's say we go to -1 and we have +1. Oh, I said plus 11. Oops. So as you see here, this number where it was -1 and this number where it was +1 is the same. That's also kind of an example of equations like moving, and they will like pass the same point. So like it's kind of a circular equation, but not really. But like bear with me, bear with me. I wanted to show that off just because like it shows that just like the imaginary number cycle in a much more crude and more two-dimensional world, you go high enough and low enough and you hit the same point. You go four iterations of squares, or you go four iterations of powers, you get back to the square root of -1. You go high enough with the you pass the center point of the circle, and you will start going back up in the same way that you would be resetting, basically. So you would go to a non-existent point and then start again. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what I was looking at. So this is what I'm kind of saying. Like, so consider this: we got Hank Sticks. If y'all get this reference, shout out to y'all. Consider this: Hank Sticks. He looks at he looks at this circle here. He sees the circle getting bigger. Hank Stick sees the circle getting bigger, and then the circle starts getting smaller, and then it comes back to this size. So Hank Stick or Sticks lives in the 2D world, and he's observing a sphere moving through it. This is what's actually moving through his 2D world. He's seeing the sphere move, and it's basically he sees this point. He sees this point going up around, getting bigger, and then coming back down. But he sees it in two dimensions, so he sees this outer circle here. That's essentially what's happening. That's what I'm trying to illustrate with that math example that I gave on Mathway. Um, so as God made us in the three-dimensional plane, we like can things move through us? God made us in three dimensions. Can things move through us? Well, yes, but technically no. But time and forces can move through us. So you may think, um, well, time forces energy, spiritual, supernatural, physical energy can move through us, and time as well. Um, an example of this, as an example, you're playing football, so you got a dude playing football. He's got his shoulder pads on, and he gets hit here. Now, my hands are physical. So, like, let's say I hit him. Let's say I hit him. I hit him. My hands will stop because my hands are a physical thing that can be perceived. They have mass and all that. But the force does not stop at his skin. The force does not stop at his body. The force goes through his body. The energy from my push goes through his body. And yes, there's an opposing force that will, like, stop my hands from just going through him. But the energy from the force goes through his body. Just like time, we move through time. We can't really stop time. You can stop a train, you can't stop time. You can stop you can stop an egg from breaking due to the amount of force applied to it, but you can't stop the energy being transferred to whatever stops it. That's what I mean when I say like things can move through us. And so one small problem is that time is technically kind of made up. Like, who decided that one day is 24 hours long? Who decided to make 1 minute? Uh, who decided like 60 seconds is 1 minute? Who decided that 100? Like, why not 100 seconds or why not 10 seconds? It's a concept that's made up, but we all agree to it. So we're gonna just say that time exists. but we can't really do anything with it. It's something we cannot affect. We know that if we leave the gravitational field of the Earth, gravity still has an effect on us, and we can. I mean, at least on Earth, we can change the effect of gravity on ourselves by losing or gaining weight. That's how weight works. It's gravity multiplied by your mass, your acceleration due to gravity multiplied by your mass. So, what is all this saying? All this is just to say that you could think like I'm laying the baseline down for how this could make sense. So like the actual substance of it. So let me come over here. Actual substance. So in electrical engineering or the electrical world, we deal with frequencies. We also deal with voltage, reactance, phase, and a few other things. So now it would be easy to just discount imaginary numbers as like not existing because I mean, with a name like imaginary, they must not exist. But then explain how, as the frequency or 1 over a time increases, an inductor becomes more resistive, and a capacitor becomes less resistive. And a resistor doesn't change. Explain that. Well, the way that we explain it in the electrical field is that um, instead of ohms equaling resistance, we say it's Z, which is the same thing, Z or omega. Z is the last omega is the last letter of the Greek alphabet. Z is the last letter of our alphabet. That's probably why we put those two together. But instead of calling it resistance, we call it impedance. Now, with impedance, this is the resistance or the resistivity of electric flow. So with it being just the resistivity of electric flow, it's essentially the same thing as resistance, except impedance has a very important part. Dr. Hudson drilled this into us extremely harshly. We basically said it every day. What is impedance? What is impedance? Reactance. Actually, we're going to do this in red and blue, so you can see how it makes purple. Reactance and phase. What is reactance? Reactance is the real resistance of a component at a given frequency. So it's a real reactance at a given it's a real resistance at a given frequency. So at 100 or at 1,000 hertz, 100 ohm resistor equals 100 ohms of reactance. Oh, this is also represented as X. Um, a 1 microfarad capacitor equals 1 over 2 pi times 1,000 times 1 microfarad X, which I'm just going to calculate it real quick. Did I just turn my TV off? I just turned my TV off. Oh no, no, I didn't. I just hit Netflix on my TV. What the bro, bro? Hold up, y'all. This is the downside about like trying to work like with limited space. Okay, we're back. We're back. Okay. Um, 1,000 times 2 pi times 1 to the -6 gives you about 159 ohms resistance. Or reactance, I mean. My bad, sorry. A 1 millihenry inductor is 2 pi FL, which equals 6.28 ohms. Those are three very different numbers for the same exact frequency. What in the cheese is going on? Well, I'll tell you. Frequency response because of the phase component. Phase component is a shift Well, it's not necessarily due to the phase component, but I'm just like trying to make a segue into how to explain phase. Phase is usually represented in as an angle theta, but it's usually in degrees. Um, and it's the shift in time of a signal with frequency. Now, a resistor, if I put a sine wave on a resistor at 1,000 hertz, it's going to literally match the line at 1,000 hertz. Now, I'm not the steadiest hand. Just assume that this is a perfect match. There's no shift. A capacitor, put a sine wave on that, will actually lag -90. Yeah, -90. There we go. So, capacitor will actually be -90 degrees behind, or 90 degrees behind. So technically it's leading. I think a capacitor leads. I got to double check this, make sure I say this right. So if this was a voltage, voltage versus current. It's been a while since I've had to like since I've learned this. Um, but the in a capacitor, current leads voltage. Okay, so this right here is basically what I'm trying to say. So you can see here, it looks like the leading the leading current, leading the current. Wait, so did I say that right? Current leads the voltage. Yes, current leading the voltage. So that's current leading the voltage. Right here is current leading the voltage. So you see that with the capacitor. With an inductor, you'll notice that the current lags the voltage. So I'll have the same thing, just a regular sine wave. But on this one, the current lags the voltage. So it might start here, you'll see it here. It's falling behind. It's lagging. What the freaking what? You'll see the current's lagging the voltage here. I don't know what the heck just happened, but you'll see it lagging. So how does that even work? Can you start before zero? Can you start at a time before zero? Because I mean, basically what this is saying is that it started before zero. The current started flowing before zero. Before time zero, that doesn't exist. There's no way to go back in time. You can't start before time starts. You can't start before time starts. That's not how our physical world works. You don't get to just hop and skip back in time. That's not how it works. But if time is one of the key components of the fourth dimension, we can see how time would start before we perceive it and end after we perceive it because we're just in the middle. We're basically like a point in time. We can't perceive anything coming around outside of it. All we know is what was here at the exact moment that it was here. When any other point, we have no clue what is going on. All we know is what is right here, right now, at this given moment. So that's where I come in with time moving through like the fourth dimension. We're perceiving time passing through, and that's how we get our imaginary values. Because the plane that we work through, that the this is, I kid you not, this is literally the plane. This is literally the plane. You'll have your J plane, which we already defined as being equal to I, and you'll have your real plane at minus J or minus 90 or whatever you want to say. This is where a capacitor sits. And this plus 90, this is where an inductor sits. But because this is literally just calling this entire point, this is literally saying this is all imaginary. So it shouldn't matter, right? These values matter? Yes, of course, they do. Yes, a resounding yes. These values matter a whole lot. I'm gonna go back to some of my 355 notes. If you'll give me just a second. It's in the Smith charts notes. If you were here when I was taking 355, you remember Smith charts. Um Sine waves, Smith charts. Here we go. Smith charts. Y'all remember these Smith charts? This is all uh off of impedances. This is based off of impedance. You need to have an imaginary value. These equations are so complex because you're working with imaginary values. But you hear the word imaginary a billion times, and you start to lose it. It starts to lose what it actually does. You start thinking, oh, it doesn't matter, or how do I conceptualize this? It doesn't make sense because it's all imaginary numbers. You got to make them up. But if I could just make them up, why don't I just put this somewhere? But because there's actually a frequency response, because you're trying to do impedance matching. You want to match this point with some point on here on this circle to get back to this midline right here. You want to get back to this middle line right here where you get 50 impedance, 50 ohms of impedance. But you might be stuck. You might be stuck somewhere like right here. How in the cheese am I going to get all the way back around here to get back to 50 ohms of impedance? I have to go either left or right around the circle, but I can't just go left or right around the circle for nothing. If I add these are for really high frequency systems. The charts are used to like do high frequency response stuff for impedance matching. But at like 30 gigahertz, if I add a millimeter of wire, it's gonna matter. It will matter because now I've introduced. Hold up. Go back. Go even further back. Even further back to the AC concepts. To the AC concepts I brought up way back in the one of the first. Here it is. This is exactly what I was talking about. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Fourth dimensional numbers. This is exactly what I was talking about right here. Z, radians, blah blah blah, all this stuff right here. But take a look. You have a real inductor. A real inductor is made up of more than just a. Wait, hold up. A real capacitor is made up of an inductor, a resistor, a capacitor, and a resistor in parallel with that. That's going to affect the circuit because at these at these really high frequencies, this stuff changes quite a bit. Look at this. Look at this. LC. This is parasitic inductance. It's parasitic. It changes the entire value. It changes how the self resonance of a circuit behaves. This is all self resonance. Like if I add any piece of wire, if I add too much wire, take away too much wire, now I've changed the frequency response, and now instead of having it bounce here, I might have something. And I'm going to delete this later because I might come back to these notes one day in the future. But if I have these if I have this here, and I add like, let's say I add 1 millimeter of wire, I've changed this frequency here to now bounce here or something like that. Maybe that's how much I could have changed the circuit by adding a millimeter of wire, because now I've added inductance, now I've added resistance, now I haven't added really capacitance. But if the wires are parallel and they're the same length of wire and they're running the same distance apart from each other, I've created a capacitor in a small sense, and now I'm running with these values that change based off of frequency because of reactance, and there's a phase angle difference. And with the phase angle difference, now we're working with different timing components. With different timing components, we have different frequencies. With the different frequencies, now we have a different frequency response. Now we have a different self resonance. Now the circuit might not work. This is why this stuff is important. It's important to recognize this. I'm not trying to change. Getting kind of amped up. I'm not trying to change the concept of math. I'm not changing anything about math. I'm not saying that what's the dude's name? I'm not saying that Gauss's law or Faraday's law. I'm not changing any of that stuff. I'm simply offering another way to think, a different way to think. But this stuff is still important. It's extremely important, because if you don't recognize how important imaginary numbers are, you are doomed to fail in electrical engineering. You're doomed to fail in electronics engineering. You're doomed to fail in probably computer science, and you're doomed to fail in math if you don't understand how imaginary numbers work. If you're sitting there looking at, oh well, this is all an imaginary number. Did I pause the video? I think I paused the video. Oh no, we're good. So if I say that these are all imaginary, and someone doesn't understand that, no, it's not fake. It's a real thing. It really does exist. It's something you can't see it. We can't perceive it. We cannot perceive it. We can't perceive this. That's something we can't do. We can't conceptualize it. We can't get our heads around it. Much like you can't imagine what a fourth dimensional object would look like. You can't think about it. You've never seen it. There's no real application that we can perceive in our 3D world that would even come close to anything in a higher dimension. But we know that there's some things that are there. There's some things we just can't see, but we know they're there. You see what I'm saying? Everyone except atheists believe that there's some like higher power. What is this power? Now, I'm not gonna get on this soapbox to preach the gospel right now because that's not what I'm talking about. But I believe it's God. Some people believe that it's a Hindu god. Some people believe that it's just spiritualism. Sometimes some people or the Native Americans used to believe it was like great spirits. Some people believe it's nirvana. Some like there's some higher power that exists outside of our natural perception. But most people who are not atheists can admit they think that there's something bigger that we can't perceive. You see what I'm saying? I'm not out here trying to convert right now because this is about imaginary numbers and a higher order plane. But the point I'm making is we inherently know there's something bigger. There's something more than just the three dimensions that we see: the up, down, left, right, and in and out. There has to be something more. And with that idea of being something more, that's where I'm getting. You can explain this away with a fourth dimensional number. It's outside of our realm of possibility. Just like a circle can pass through, we see the effects. I'm sorry, y'all. I got kind of amped up. I get I, I love engineering. I love engineering, and I love having crazy ideas. I love crazy ideas. I'll talk like there's a little something about me. If you want to vibe with me, start talking about time travel. Start talking about superpowers. Start talking about something science. I love it. I may not always understand it, but I love this stuff. I love it so much that like I just nerd out, I geek out about this stuff. And I get passionate about it. That's why I got so loud. I love this stuff. So going back to what I'm saying, if these we can perceive these effects. So what I'm saying is yes, this is the real and imaginary plane, but why not call this we could also say just for the sake of thought, just for the sake of seeing it with some kind of visual, sensible representation, because we don't want to say something that's going to confuse another person that says like, "Oh, you just use the imaginary value of this." What imaginary value? What? Huh? What is that? I don't know what that is, man. Oh, it's just the imaginary value. You take the phase angle difference and it makes an imaginary value, and you pull that from an imaginary number, and it's in the imaginary plane, and you mix that with the real component of the reactance, and the reactance and the phase together create an impedance, and the impedance might be real, it might not be real. It depends on how it adds up, and if it's more real than imaginary, you'll have a real impedance. But if it's more imaginary than real, you'll have an imaginary. That stuff gets confusing to people. I get it. I understand it. And it still confuses me sometimes. I understand this stuff. That's why I chose this field. I don't know why I'm yelling at y'all. But what I'm trying to say, if this is the imaginary, not the imaginary, if this is the fourth dimension, if this is the fourth dimension, and we have all other like all our third dimension, You see how the third, see how it just like crosses at one point. The fourth dimension really just like crosses over at some point. That's kind of like that's how we can how we perceive the effects of it. It just passes through at some point. It might be here. It might be here. 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 But it just passes through at some point, and it could pass through like this, or it could pass through like this, or it could pass through like this, pass through like this, pass through like this, like this. Doesn't really matter how it passes through. It can pass through any way it needs to pass through. But essentially, I've just proposed that plus 90, minus 90. The same rules apply. The same exact rules apply. You could even still call this the real plane if you wanted to, or the perceptible plane. It doesn't really matter. But it's the same rules that apply. But saying that it's a higher dimensional aspect now takes away the fact of, well, did we make it up? No, we didn't make it up. We know that there's a first dimension. We know there's a second dimension. We live in the third dimension. It wouldn't be entirely unreasonable to say that there's a fourth or a fifth or a sixth or a seventh. But I mean, the fourth is the most reasonable one that you could say without looking like you're an absolute wacko. Pieces. um, I'm sorry. The Aggie pride just had to come out. But but yeah, like this this is where I was headed with this. I haven't changed anything about the math or understanding of how this stuff works. All I have said is that we could imagine and think of it like this rather than like this. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Inductor, capacitor. Literally the same exact thing. Literally the same exact thing right here. It's the same deal, the same prospect. Am I even okay? We're good. I just want to make sure like I wasn't. It's the same thing. I'm not changing. I'm not changing a thing. All I'm proposing is a word change. All I'm proposing is a word. Now, if that confuses you, just say imaginary numbers. If imaginary number confuses you, I've just given you a way to think about it outside of the box. That could still explain away how this stuff changes in a real world application. If if the fourth dimension is time, so if the fourth dimension is time, that would stand to reason. You can start you can start and stop at negative. You can start at negative. You can have negative objects. Um, you can stop at any point. That's what it's kind of like that's kind of what it's like. I just thought about this. It's like a video or a movie. I'm watching a movie, or I'm making a YouTube video. So consider this: I'm making a video on YouTube. I don't like something, so I now make negative of that thing. I delete a part of the video. Now, to the video itself, if you were living in that video, or when you watch the video after I've cut it and edited everything down, um, you're not gonna know what was cut was cut. You're not gonna know that was gone. You have no idea. You have no idea what happened. If I add a joke, sure, you'll be able to tell like it's not natural, but like if it's just an audio clip or really well edited, who's to say it isn't real? If I were to record my wall back here completely blank, record without moving the camera. Oh my gosh, my knee is about to pop. Without moving the camera, I sit down here, and then again without moving the camera, I take another picture here, and then I splice them together. That wall is not going to change because I haven't changed the lighting, I haven't changed the positioning of the camera or anything like that. But if I splice all three of those videos together, it's going to look like I have two of me, and I'm looking at myself like, and my other self is looking at me like, and so the reality of the video shows that there are two me's. How is that possible? It's showing me at the same time, but one was recorded before the other, one was recorded after the other. But I can go back in negative time on a video from a fourth wall outside of what's actually happening and change it and affect what's going on. That's what's happening with these values um, of complex impedance. They're complex numbers. They're not imaginary numbers. They're complex numbers. That's another way you can think of it. You can think of it as a complex number. Now, if I were to just say, "Oh, it's a complex number," what does complex mean? Oh, well, it's complex. Okay, but define well, you can't think of it. It's not a. It's almost like it's not real. It's imaginary. So does it exist or no? Yes, it exists, but it's complex because a complex number is a plus bi. But just like we can't add things together that don't match units, like I don't know, adding 4 volts plus 80 degrees, that's not gonna fly. All right, that's not flying, partner. 4 volts plus 80 degrees are two way different, completely separate things. Voltage and degrees are completely opposite sides of the spectrum of what relates to it. If it was like um it was like 4 volts plus 80 milliamps or 80 milliamps at like, and I have like a 100 ohms, I can relate this to this. V equals IR, 4 volts plus, I think it's what, like 0.8 volts. Yeah, 8 volts, 12 volts. But you can't relate degrees. You can't relate. You can't really relate degrees to voltages. That's where I'm going with this stuff. That's why. I wanted I like this was really more of like a fun like brain teaser kind of thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to like I wanted something to like kind of keep my mind a little bit challenged while I'm out of school so I don't just lose all my like I don't just lose everything over the summer while I'm playing video games and just doing work and not doing actual like math like hard math or anything like that. This has no like I said at the very beginning of this, like I said way back at the very beginning, I wanted to make this crystal clear. I want this to be crystal clear. These four rules right here, these four rules is what I am standing by. I am not trying to change math. I'm not trying to, I'm not a mathematician. I could be extremely so far off the mark that I'm not even on the same planet. Okay. I could be that far off the mark. I could sound like a whack job. But this was because I wanted to, I thought about it and I was like, what's another way you can think of an imaginary number affecting a circuit? It has real consequences. If you have the wrong complex value for a for a for a circuit, you could blow something up. You could accidentally kill yourself. You could shock yourself so badly that you might actually die if you don't use the correct voltages and current flow with the correct impedance, which may include a complex value. It's dangerous to not understand this stuff. And as like a closing note, no matter how you remember it, no matter how you remember it, square root of -1 equals I. It equals J in electrical because I is already taken by I is already taken by current. It can be called complex number when it's in this form. It can be explained as a complex number. You might hear it as imaginary number. But now, if for some reason these two confuse you, and you're looking for like some kind of explanation as to why they're complex or why it's imaginary and how it's real at the same time, as I will define it to make it as universally usable as possible, a a fourth dimensional number is a number represented by the square root of -1 in any form following all mathematical rules and scientific law as an alternate term or phrase or word for imaginary numbers. Like I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to change anything about imaginary numbers. I'm not trying to change anything about complex numbers. When I say fourth dimensional, it's a number represented by the square root of -1 in any form, following all mathematical rules and scientific laws as an alternate form or as an alternate term or phrase or word for imaginary numbers. Nothing has changed about how these numbers are represented. I just wanted to somewhat prove that it's not completely crazy because we can perceive these numbers, or we cannot perceive these numbers. I'll make this a big green box. We cannot perceive these numbers or these values, like I should say, in our understanding. However, these values have a real effect on our real world or on our world, especially in the world of electricity. I want you to be informed that this is just, once again, I am just saying this could potentially be a way to think of it. Does not mean I am correct. Does not mean you have to listen to me. This was a study stream that I did for the fun of it because I wanted to just explore the idea. I wanted to just have fun with it without actually studying for a test. I wanted to have fun with the world of electrical engineering. I just wanted to have some fun with this stuff. Um, sorry for yelling at y'all. I got a little excited. I just got a little excited. I'm sorry. Um, but yeah, I want you all to know, please take this with like a whole mountain of salt. Take whatever I've said, except for the fact that imaginary numbers and complex numbers are the same thing and they're extremely important. Everything except for that fact right there that I just stated extremely loudly. Everything else except imaginary numbers and complex numbers are a real thing that have a real effect on our real world that is important enough that I am yelling about it. Everything else, take it with the whole mountain of salt. Um, I just want y'all to. I want to give you. I want to give the people who watch this video more tools in their toolbox to have a better shot at understanding something that a lot of people do not understand. Complex numbers are complex and complicated. Imaginary numbers, they sound like something that's just made up, and why not just like make it up as I go along? But math still applies. Real math still applies. Okay. Bringing in another dimension to it is not to make this more complicated. It is simply to expand your way of thinking so you can maybe see it from a little bit of a larger perspective that will allow you to think and see what's actually happening with the circuit. Um, yeah. Um, I hope I hope y'all got a kick out of this video. I hope at least y'all like got to get a kick out of the video and like go off like a Bill Nye the Science Guy kind of thing. Um, if you're struggling trying to understand imaginary numbers or complex numbers or something like that, drop a comment. I'll cover the topic in more detail of actually what they are and how they work mathematically. Um, if I really hope this helps some of you understand what's going on in the complex plane. Because I happen to understand it enough in a way where like I could spin it in a different light to to kind of explain it to somebody else. Um, but yeah, that being said, I really do hope that I was able to give you guys the best information that I possibly could have given you. Um, I really do truly hope that this helps somebody. I'm gonna probably have to like throw something like this, like a voiceover at the very beginning of the stream. Like, if this does not help you, disregard all of my information. But I really do hope that it helps somebody, and I really hope that if you see this video and you were struggling trying to understand how imaginary numbers and complex numbers really work, or how they're related to the real world, or how they actually matter when it comes to electrical engineering. I really do hope that I helped you figure it out. I really hope that, and I'm not trying to make it more difficult on you. But I've rambled on long enough. So with that being said, I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video stream. If you liked it, if you learned something, strike that like button like a ninja really would. Subscribe today to join the Shinobi. And I'll see all you guys in the next video. All right.